It's July, it's sunny and it's warm in theory, and if we're not careful, our plants can start to struggle. So let me show you some of the things that I'm doing to keep them in tip-top shape. So I have this coleus here that is always drying out. I'm having to water every 2 days, particularly in summer. In winter, it's probably maybe every 4 or 5 days, but now that the heat is here and the sun is here, it's drying out very quickly. It's a particular problem with the coleus, I find. So he's already in quite a big pot for the size of the plant. So I'm not sure that's necessarily the issue. I just think I think he wants something in his soil that's going to hold on to moisture a bit better. So I've got a cunning plan. And my cunning plan is to grab a bowl, to add some soil. I'm going to repot him. I'm going to use something. I'm going to add something to the soil that is hopefully going to retain moisture much more easily for him. So how much do I need? Something like that. So I've got my usual soil mix from Botanica, and then my secret weapon is some vermiculite. Now vermiculite helps maintain moisture and nutrients. So it's a bit different to perlite. Perlite is porous and that will drain the moisture, excess water, so the soil doesn't stay too wet. But vermiculite is going to help retain some moisture. So I do have some perlite in here, but I'm going to add some vermiculite so I'm not having to water this guy every 2 days. So I'm not sure how much to add, to be honest, because I've never used vermiculite before. I don't tend to have issues with my plants drying out all that much, which is why I've not used it. You don't want to use vermiculite thinking that it's the same as perlite, because it's not. It's got a different use case. So I've added quite a decent amount there. So I'm going to give this a thorough mix. Okay, so that's all mixed. Looks quite nice. Almost looks golden specks in my soil mix. Once again, I'm getting my table all dirty, but never mind. So I've got a nice big pot for him. I've got a decorative pot all ready. Look at that. So let's get him out. Oops. So he's not particularly root bound or anything, as you can see. I mean, there are roots there, but it's not like a spaghetti party or anything like that. So it's not an issue of him being root bound. He just, for whatever reason, he just needs more moisture than the soil at the moment can provide him. So I'm going to add a base layer of this new mix. So I'm just eyeing it up so it's more or less in the same height in the pot as it was before, which it is. So I've got my base layer spot on for a change. And now I'm going to backfill around. So the idea being, I know the old soil is going to still be in the root ball, but he's going to start spreading his legs into the new soil, and the vermiculite is going to be there to help out, and hopefully he won't dry out as much. Maybe I can water him once a week, which is the dream, which is what I do for all my other plants, more or less. So now I can bring over the outer pot, pop him in, and then give him a good drink. So I think I'll let him soak up that water for a good hour or two, come back, empty any excess, and then get on with the rest of his life. So in the warmer months of summer, it's dead easy to fall into the trap of thinking that your plants are drying out quicker, so you need to keep topping them up with water and not actually checking. And that's a trap that I've fallen into, particularly with 2 plants. So I've got my Fittonia here, my pink and green Fittonia, and then over here I've got my Peperomia Santorini. Now this Fittonia looks a bit droopy, doesn't he? and you would think he's underwater, he needs a drink, but looking at the soil, he's got wet soil and he's still droopy. So I've been in the habit of just topping him up with water, thinking that he's looking dry, when really I should have been checking with my finger or my moisture meter, and I would have realised he doesn't need a drink. So this guy's been overwatered. And the same with this Peperomia Santorini. So you can start to see that he's losing some leaves at a bit of an alarming rate. They're feeling a bit mushy. So I assumed, because he was a bit droopy and because it's a bit of a pain to kind of pull him out of his pot to check underneath, I was just topping him up with water. I was being lazy. But he is struggling with a bit of overwatering. So I'm going to let these bad boys dry out, and then I'm going to check the soil and the roots to see if they need repotting. I always go on about pruning on the channel because I absolutely love it, and plants do respond well. And it's no different in July. In fact, it's probably more important in the summer months to keep giving your plants a good pruning. So I have my beautiful string of hearts here. Well, kind of beautiful. It always gets this tangly mess, doesn't it? The strands are never individual, they're always clumped together. You can't really avoid that, I don't think. But this guy has gone from here all the way down to the floor, touching the floor. It's getting a bit messy, making a mess of my floor as the leaves drop off. So he needs cutting back. Now the beauty of this plant is that when you cut a strand, it normally produces two, so it gets a little bit extra bushy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it right here in one big cut, like so. Do that one as well. So I've got all this to play with. So I'm going to pop that there. It's already getting tangled. And I've got some round the back here. So I'm basically giving it a haircut, and I want it all to be the same length. Otherwise, he's going to look a bit silly. The rest of his friends are going to take the mickey out of him. So there we go. So we're going to save these. I'm going to show you later what we can do with these. There are a couple of other plants that need a good prune. I'm always pruning my Ficus elasticus for my rubber plants, and I've got some towel ready because I'm going to do it again. Do my Ficus elastica Tsineki. So I pruned him once here and he's branched out into two. I pruned each of these stems again here and here. And that one branched out into three, and that one branched out into two. And to keep the cycle going, so it gets a nice branched out tree-like structure, I'm going to prune again. So I think I'm going to go about there. Sap always bleeds, so this is why I've got this kitchen roll handy, because it always goes everywhere. Can never catch it in time, it's already landed on my floor. I'll clean it up after, no worries. I'm going to cut this one here. Pop that on there. You need 3 or 4 hands for this, that's for sure. So I'm just going through and pruning each of these stems. Now you don't need to worry too much about where you're making the cut, because plants do always grow back. So it looks a bit silly at the moment with these paper towels on, but once the sap stops coming out so readily, I'll take these off. Normally it takes an hour or two, something like that. And then these guys here, I've got loads of these cuttings now. I'm not going to throw these away. Well, maybe a couple of them we might put on the compost bin, but we're going to use these. I'll show you what to do with them. And my next victim is up here. This is my Coleus. So this is actually a cutting that I took from the mother plant. I don't know where she is, but I'm always taking cuttings of Coleus because they don't tend to last that long and they get very leggy. So this guy, I did prune him back here and he's branched out into 3 stems, but I've kind of neglected him. I needed to prune him a bit more because otherwise these stems just get a little bit too leggy. So I want him to branch out further. So I'm going to start by cutting that one there, that one there, and then that one there. You don't need to be too alarmed when you do that. So I've got far too many of these plants. I think I've got 4 of them in the house. So I'm not going to use these for propagating. I'm going to put them on the compost pile. I think it's about time that I prune back this satin pothos, because he's looking a little bit silly, isn't he? So he's up here and his vines go all the way down to the floor. Extremely long and leggy. So obviously this guy is not getting enough light really. There is a Sansi grow light here shining over these plants. So it's quite bushy up here, but down here, not getting enough light, so it's stretching, trying to creep along the floor to get to that window maybe, who knows. So let's not beat around the bush and let's start pruning. So I'm not worrying too much about where I'm cutting, because I know that this plant does love to bounce back dead easily. So I'm more or less going to the leaf on the node and just cutting just after that point. So there you go, look at all that. Absolute craziness. So all of these stems that are cut are all going to branch out into 2 stems, 2 new stems. So we're going to get an extra bushy plant. Probably will get leggy again. I probably will have to cut it back again, but that's a problem for another day. So I've been bigging up semi-hydro plants for a little while now, because I'm seeing some great results. Mainly this spider plant here that's looking super healthy. Best I've ever been able to keep a spider plant in my house, in my care. So semi-hydro is great, but there is a bit of maintenance that we do need to do, and namely that's just refreshing the soil, because it gets a bit brown and murky, as you just saw there, particularly with leca, as you'll see with the snake plant there. So it gets a bit brown and murky, so it's a good idea just to go in and just give the pond, in this case, a bit of a rinse through. It just flushes out all the salts, clears the water, gets rid of any dirt lingering around, and freshes everything nicely up. So I'm going to do that for these 3 plants here. Okay, so I've given everything a run through. You would have noticed that I was washing the leaves of this snake plant as well. It's always a good kind of idea to give things a wash when you can, just to make sure that there's no pests, no spider mites lingering around. I gave the bowls a bit of a rinse through as well, but good clean. So this is all a spring clean, which is good stuff. And now we're going to top up the cash pots with a reservoir of water to keep these semi-hydro plants nice and hydrated, but it's always important to add your fertilizer, so it needs to be hydroponic fertilizer, because it has the full spectrum of nutrients that normal houseplant fertilizer doesn't have. So we just need to make sure we use that. So I'm going to fill these up about 1/3 of the way up. That one in there, spider plant in here, and they are all refreshed, and I'll repeat the same process probably in a couple of months or something. So I have the string of heart cuttings that I took earlier, and basically from this we can make brand new plants, and it's dead easy with a string of hearts. All we need to do is take a leaf cutting like that, and that will root dead easy. As long as there's a bit of stem left with the petiole and the leaf attached, and we'll pop that into some soil. Don't need to muck around with water or anything, and that will root and the new stems will develop. Now I have seen people lay the whole stem on soil, but I think that's a bit of a faff, because it's quite difficult to get the entire stem touching the soil, because it tends to kind of wobble about all over the place. So I've probably got too much material for me to use, so I'll probably just do a few, enough to fill that pot that I've got prepped over there. So I'm just going to go through and take a few cuttings. Okay, I think that is enough. Because I've got so much material here, I was quite picky on the ones that I chose. So I picked the bigger leafed ones, and I think I've got enough. So I've got a pot here filled with soil. I'm just going to moisten it just to make my life a little bit easier. Just like so. Don't want it completely wet. Just moisten the top, and then it's a case of popping the stem in the soil so it's submerged. It doesn't have to be buried completely, just lying on top really, and that will send the message to the stem that there's moist soil there for it to start developing some roots. So I'm going to go through and fill this pot up. Okay, so I've got the last one here, just this little small one. So keep the soil nice and moist, pop it somewhere nice and bright, and then the new stem should start to emerge. Now there will be some casualties. You can't expect 100% success rate, particularly with a string of hearts, because it might just be that some of these aren't quite touching the soil in the right way, but most of them will root. And then when these start to grow out, you could even take some cuttings of the ones that have grown and then pop them back in to make a nice full plant at the top of the pot. Okay, so I'll probably put that under my grow lights. Make sure you download my plant troubleshooting handbook. It's a handy digital guide that goes through all the common plant problems you see, why they happen, and what to do about it. And it's all for free. It looks like these cuttings are in desperate need of getting potted on. Got a few cuttings here on this console table, and they've all got roots, so let's go and do that. So when I'm potting up pothos cuttings, I normally do it in two different ways. If I want it to climb, then I normally just keep it one plant per pot, so that's the focal point, and the leaves just get bigger and bigger, like with my pothos over there. Or if I want more of a bushy pot, then I'll just put it all into one pot, no problem. So let's have a look at these roots. Get these on the table. Just want to check that they are all rooted, so it looks like they are. So in an ideal world, you're looking for about 2 inches or so of roots. That one's just a bit stuck, come on. So that's ideal right there. 1 inch or so, 2 inches of pots. These ones have been left maybe a little bit too long, although not too bad. So this one has grown nice healthy roots and it's developed a new stem already, so that's definitely ready to be potted on. So all these are rooted. If they are, that's got a nice new stem as well, so these are growing very well. You can leave them just to grow hydroponically in the water if you wanted to, in the vase or water. Just want to change it every so often, so you do have murky water like that, which is a bit not very pleasant. Don't worry too much if your roots aren't especially long. As long as there is some root tissue, pothos are resilient and they do tend to survive. So I've got my nice big pot. These are apparently the same plant, devil's ivy. I think that's, I don't know, it's got more variegation in it for some reason. Not sure why. So I'm just going to put a base layer of soil at the bottom. That might be a bit too much, but we'll see. Should be okay. So I'm aiming for a nice bushy pot here. I might alternate the dark green and the light green, or the variegated ones, just to make it a bit pretty. So I'm going to fill this up now. Don't know what that one is. Did that one break off or something? Fill this pot up with my cuttings. Okay, so that looks like a nice bushy plant, and it's just a case of topping up with soil so all those roots are submerged in soil. Okay, so it might look a little bit janky at first. That's because it's not really anchored in the pot. I made a mess on my table, but I'll do clear it up, don't worry. Once the plant anchors in the soil and puts down roots, it will strengthen itself and it won't be so floppy. So it's just a case of putting it somewhere nice and bright, keeping it nice and hydrated for the first few weeks, because these are water roots. So keep the soil nice and moist, don't let it dry out too much, otherwise that has potential to kill your new roots and then ruin your cuttings. So that's going to go somewhere nice and bright, and it'll be a nice big pothos in a few months. So it's always a good idea to check in on your plants, just keep a beady eye on how they're doing, especially with the warmer temperatures, see if they're struggling from the increase in temperatures. Now the summer's well and truly here. So for example, this coleus is absolutely loving life because it loves the sun and it loves the warmth, and it's getting nice bright red leaves, absolutely gorgeous. This pothos here is right up against this southwest facing window, and the leaves just keep getting bigger and bigger. Absolutely huge, that last leaf. But a plant that is not too happy is one that is tucked right in the corner here. So I do kind of forget about him because he's tucked in this corner with loads of different plants around here, so my line of sight is kind of blocked. But it's my Dieffenbachia, and as you can see, he's looking a little bit worse for wear. Some of these leaves are going yellow and fading. It's not a complete write-off or anything like that, but he's just losing leaves at a slightly alarming rate. So I'm just pulling these leaves off here. So I need to move him to a less bright spot. And I think that'll do the trick. This spot here is a little bit too bright for the Philodendron Pink Princess, bless her little cotton socks. A southwest facing conservatory, and she's right on the end of this bamboo shelving, right up against the glass. It's a little bit too bright for her, I think. She's on the struggle bus. She was suffering from root rot, so I recently repotted her in a recent video. But as you can see, her leaves are pale and kind of all pink, which is a bit unusual. There should be some green in them. And that suggests to me that it's a little bit too bright. So I'm going to move her back somewhere and try and find a spot for her somewhere. I guess it can go here. Let's do that. And then also in my conservatory, we have another one that's on the struggle bus due to light, is this Tridescantia. I think this is an albiflora. It's got green and white pinstripes. Very nice plant. Always struggles during winter, and it looks nice during spring and summer normally. But this guy is getting a bit faded, a bit too much heat stress, I think. That's why we've got some of these crispy leaves as well, and the leaves are fading. So it needs a bit of a tidy up, to be honest, a bit of a pruning back. But first of all, let's move him somewhere a little bit less bright. Can go there. So this here is becoming one of my favourite little devices. Oops. This is a little squeezy bottle. And it's quite nifty for watering your plants. For example, if you've got a little baby one like this, little jade plant, then you can get in there and just squeeze a small amount of liquid into the soil without it going everywhere. So that's good. And then I like using it to water my orchids. So you want to keep your orchids relatively dry. You don't want them sat in sopping wet water, but you do want them to, all the roots to get evenly moist. So I like to go in there and just go around with my little squeezy bottle, and I can control where the water's going. And I'm just wetting the roots, like so. So all these aerial roots can get a little bit of a drink. Dead easy. Okay, so I've got my Ficus elastica cuttings. It is a shame to not make use of them as much as you can. So I either turn them into cuttings or add them to the compost pile. So I've got a glass of water here. So I'm just going to quickly prep these. And it's just a case. I always do the top cutting, the top piece of the stem. I don't really necessarily chop into individual ones because you get a quicker result if you just do the top cutting. So I'm just going to remove these yellowing leaves. It's still going to release sap all over me. Then pop it into water. So we're removing these leaves so that they don't sit in the glass of water, and it's less stress on the plant. It just lets it focus on developing roots. Doesn't have to worry about upkeeping all these extra leaves. So we can take, I tend to leave maybe 3 maximum leaves on the Ficus elastica. That's okay, a bit of a longer stem on that one. So that's 3 cuttings I've got already. And then, I accidentally ripped off the stem, but never mind, we've got more backup, so I'm just going to be a bit more careful with this one. So that one should be okay. There we go. So they should all root in about maybe 4 weeks. I'll give it a month for these to root, put them somewhere nice and bright. Cuttings root really well under grow lights, so I might pop these under my Sansi grow lights. Okay, so for this next one, viewer discretion is advised. If you're a bit squeamish, maybe a bit don't like creepy crawlies, then maybe skip to the next section. So if your plant takes an inexplicable decline all of a sudden, like mottling on the leaves, yellowing, droopiness, basically like it's on its way out, then have a close inspection of the leaves and see if you can see anything crawling around, which is what's happening with this Califea crocata here. So he lived down there, and there's a bit of a bug issue in that corner because there's 2 plants that have had spider mites now, and there's a bit of a whitefly issue as well. I'm hoping it's not spreading to the rest of my collection. So yes, spider mites. So it's quite easy to see them when it's absolutely caked in spider mites like this plant is. You can see the webbing, you can see all the spider mites moving around. I've got a camera with a macro lens, which is absolutely fantastic for spotting spider mites. You can get right in there and see them all moving around. So yeah, it's a little bit grim. I get itchy arms when I look at it. So the first thing you absolutely want to do is take it away from the rest of your collection, because if that plant touches a leaf of another plant for any period of time, then the risk of a transfer is quite high. So you want to keep it somewhere isolated. So we're going to treat this plant. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take it outside and give it a good spray down. Spider mites don't like wet, they like dry conditions. So we're going to spray it down with a powerful hose, and then we're going to treat it with pesticide. And we're going to keep treating it for the next couple of weeks to see if we can get the problem under control. Right, so it's always a good idea to keep on top of repotting your plants. This poor little fella has clearly outgrown the pot that he lives in. I mean, Look at that aerial root. Roots coming out of the bottom. So he lives in perlite, but I think he's pretty much all roots now, I would imagine. Let's get him out and have a look. I don't want to rip him off actually. Let's just cut these loose, because they're a bit mushy anyway. So it's a good idea just to prune them off. And then see if we can get this out. There we go, look at that. Now that is root bound. So obviously this is an extreme example of a root bound plant. Don't let it get to this stage, but if you start seeing, you know, spaghetti in the pot all around the edge and all that kind of stuff, then it's well worth repotting. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got a much bigger pot here for him to really spread his legs, because he's always been this size really. He's always remained quite small. So to remedy this ramen noodle thing that I've got going here, I'm just going to prune the bottom, and that should loosen up the roots nicely, which it has. Okay, so he's living in perlite, like I say. I'm going to get rid of this aerial root because it's really annoying. There we go. Get rid of that one as well, trim that back. So you can root prune plants. The roots always do grow back, and there's plenty of root tissue here to support the growth of the plant. So I've got a nice bigger pot. I've got my Cybertanica mix, which is just a mix of coconut core, perlite, I think there's some charcoal in there, a bit of slow release fertilizer, I think. And there he is. Hopefully he's much more happy now. So I do need to give him a drink, but I haven't got a cash pot, and I don't want water to go all over my table because I've already made a mess. Hopefully Mr. Shuffle doesn't come down and see. So I'll try and find a cash pot to pop him in and give him a good drink. Otherwise he's going to go somewhere nice and bright, and hopefully you'll start actually growing. That's it for this video. To check out the other videos in this series, click on the link up here and I'll see you there.